What's your breakdown on the first three games? I mean, obviously it hasn't looked good. They're 1-2. They had kind of a very soft beginning to their schedule, and yet here they are 3 weeks in with a losing record. What's your takeaway from the first 3 weeks of the season?
My big takeaway is that the quarterbacks have let this team down, whether it was in Chicago with Trey Lance or last week in Denver with Jimmy Garoppolo. Both those games, they should have put up more points than they did, and misses by the quarterbacks or not pulling the trigger in one instance has cost them a lot of points, and that's why they are sitting at 1-2 at this time.
Is it absurd to talk Brock Purdy?
No, I don't. Oh, I mean, it's absurd in that we're not going to see him start in these next couple of weeks, but I think that you could see a Brock Purdy taking over probably like around the middle of the season, around that bye week, if this thing is going and trending in the wrong direction.
How do you evaluate him?
I like Purdy. I never understood all the negativity around him throughout training camp, because I saw a guy who could make all of the throws. My only concern with Purdy is the decision making at times gets a little wild. You watch his college film and you see him make some poor decisions in that respect. But I feel pretty confident in saying that, like, if Brock Purdy was making that throw to Deebo Samuel on Monday night, that's a touchdown.
Right.
He can make that throw. We've seen him make that throw in training camp. And Jimmy Garoppolo, he struggles with that throw even when the guy's not running down the sideline.
It's very interesting. So if I said to you, what's wrong with the 49er offense, have you already answered that question? Have you already basically said, it's the quarterbacks, or is it tied to the run game? Is it tied to Kyle's play calling? Is it tied to the struggles in the interior of the O-line and now the not having Trent Williams? How would you evaluate? Because clearly the 49ers, you look at the numbers. I mean, I have them right here. They're third in points allowed defense. They're second in yards on defense. When you flip the card and you go to offense, they're 28th in points scored. They're 23rd in total offense. Do you put that all on the quarterbacks? How much does Kyle bear responsibility for that, or is there a factor that we're not considering?
Well, Kyle Shanahan's the head coach, so he's going to he has to be the blame for the turnovers, all those things that go along with it. But it's turnovers and it's quarterback play. In Chicago, you have the turnover by Deebo Samuel on the first possession. You have the airmail by Trey Lance on the second one. And then you go into the start of the second half, and on the first possession, you have Jawan Jennings wide open in the end zone, and the quarterback takes a sack instead of delivering the football. And so there's more points off the board. And then you go to this game on Sunday night against Denver, and you've got receivers running all over the field wide open, and the quarterback just can't put it on them or chooses not to throw to him. It's really odd, and the offensive line hasn't been great. The running game was really good the first couple of weeks. It struggled a little bit, but you need a quarterback to be able to put the ball on guys when they're running wide open.
Hey, Jack, I'd say my biggest concern is sort of the lack of explosive plays, and I'd love to get your opinion on why we're not seeing the explosive plays that we normally do, and is it just a matter of Jimmy's not hitting them, or also, the run game doesn't seem like it's producing explosive plays outside of the long one to Jeff Wilson and the long one to Debo the week before?
Yeah, well, and this was a problem for the 49ers last year as well, the lack of explosiveness, and that's why they put Deebo Samuel in the backfield, is because they didn't have anybody in the backfield that could give them an explosive play. And I still don't see that. They don't have an explosive element in their backfield other than Deebo Samuel. That's why I think they need to get Jordan Mason in the game. Let's see what he can do in the regular season game because of the backs they have on the roster. He's the one that we've seen do it in training camp and in the preseason games. And so if you're going to – the running game kind of sets it up, but your quarterback needs to hit those guys. When you have Deebo Samuel running down the sideline and he's got to twist and turn and basically the quarterback's tackling him, that's a killer for you. And that's – I think they don't have an explosive element in the backfield, and then the quarterback doesn't give it to them either. I felt going into this season that they understood that they didn't have that explosive element in the backfield, but their plan was to make up for it with Trey Lance and his arm because of his ability to get the ball down the field. You don't have that now. Can Jimmy Garoppolo figure it out? We haven't seen him really be able to do that in his career.
It's really interesting. Chaz in the chat here says last week was some of the worst play calling Kyle has had for 5 years now. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? I mean, you said they were receivers open all over the field, and you kind of put it more on the quarterback. How much responsibility does Kyle bear on this? It just seems like, we've been told over and over and over again, this guy's an offensive guru. He's got Kittle, Debo, Ayuk, Trent Williams. This is year 6, and it's everybody who's there is handpicked by him and Lynch. How much of this is on Shanahan? Shouldn't they be better than 28th or 23rd?
Well, I agree with you that he does bear it, but I don't agree with Chaz here that it's the play calling that is Kyle's problem. I think Kyle's problem is that he screwed up the quarterback position since he got here. He hasn't found a guy that can make the plays for him that he needs to be made. And he had it when he was in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. But since he's gotten to San Francisco, it's been hit and miss. And I think the biggest knock on him is that he hasn't figured out the quarterback spot. And Trey Lance was the big guy that they made that move for. They didn't play him last year. The expectation was he was going to do it this year, and now he's out. And without the quarterback position being fixed, the quarterback is always the biggest everywhere, and the 49ers definitely haven't figured it out under Kyle Shanahan. I think that falls on his shoulders.